It's Movie Time is produced by John DeSando. Listen to the full shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando.
And I'm Kevin Carr.
And we are here, captives of, on It's Movie Time.
Captives of It's Movie Time. Captive show.
Yeah, it is. And we're reviewing a couple of films today, just because I don't have anything really outstanding in our repertoire at this time of year.
Don't blame yourself.
I'm not going to. The industry forces some mediocre films in this time. Not saying that yet we have decided whether we have mediocre films, but we have Captive State and Climax today. But I think the more comprehensible one of the two is kept.
It certainly is one way to say that. The most comprehensible film that we're talking about today.
Captive State is a sci-fi. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's
sci-fi thriller.
Yeah, it's a sci-fi thriller. In no way is it like any of the best sci-fi thrillers you've ever seen.
No, well, what's interesting is it's directed by Rupert Wyatt, who did Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Yes.
And it's sort of like District 9 in the sense that it's trying to make it very pragmatic and real.
Yeah.
And telling it from the ground level, and it's not a gee whiz, hey, look at the aliens, cool ships and stuff. It's more about the people in the background.
It is. And it's certainly nothing cool about their spaceships. Or whatever the heck they live in, these aliens.
You don't see much of them, too. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like the Godzilla that Gareth Edwards did, where he did less about Godzilla and more about the people running around from Godzilla.
Well, it kind of looks like a hairy Elmo or something. I don't know what they look like when you see them in their spaceships. They look like something that termites would live in.
Yeah. I mean, they're aliens. I mean, yeah. More removed from the aliens than even something like Arrival was.
Well, another fat guy at the movies, John Goodman.
Yes. The glue that holds this whole movie
boy,
together.
He does. And he's some kind of a commissioner, or commander, I think he's called.
It takes place about 10, 15 years in the future where aliens have basically invaded and taken control of everything, including the government.
Yes.
And you have a group of insurgents in Chicago because they've taken over the big cities, and the group of insurgents are trying to fight back.
Yes.
And John Goodman plays a government agent trying to track down that cell and break it apart.
Right. Where the movie goes short for me is shorting us on Vera Farmiga.
Vera Farmiga, and she's very good in a very limited role.
She plays a madam who's somehow an operative and all this stuff.
Yeah, well, and the thing is with this movie, because you're right, they do push back. There's not a whole lot about the aliens, and it's all about the people. Goodman's the thing that holds it together.
Yes,
and Farmiga's great, and the very few moments they have together are fantastic. The rest of the cast is kind of throwaway.
Oh, try to remember them. I think the young man from Moonlight is in.
Not terribly memorable in this.
Oh my gosh!
Role.
Trying to get a fix on any of the characters is very difficult, except for Goodman.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that they do with this movie is they take the whole terrorism idea and flip the card, because it's about humans fighting against aliens, and when they have superior firepower and they're in control, it's just essentially it's a group of terrorists. It's the way you could look at Star Wars. The original Star Wars, from the Empire's view, is about a group of terrorists that blow up a military base.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what they do here. And I found the most interesting part is, not to defend terrorists or anything, but it flips it on its end to say, well, if you were in that situation, this is kind of how you would perceive it. And the most interesting part of it was sort of how they put all that together, how they were trying to make that all work kind of behind the scenes. Overly complicated at times.
Kevin, I think
Silly.
Absolutely. There are different factions of these rebels or terrorists.
Yeah.
And it becomes very confusing. Put that together with the fact that Goodman's the only fully defined character on the screen. I just found it confusing. It is a unnecessarily plotting movie. Yes, it is.
Especially that first hour is a lot to get through. Well, like I said, once they start getting into the sort of the bizarre makeup of how they are trying to do this attack, it's interesting. It is absurd. They're going from carrier pigeon to everything else you can think of. But I mean, I found that mildly interesting. I did want to see more of the aliens and the the bigger picture, actually.
Because they were going to have a big rally at which the aliens were going to appear. Make one of their rare appearances.
Yeah, they rarely show up on the surface.
Right, and they certainly didn't show up for us there.
No.
Although we had that somewhat Amazonic woman singing the Battle Hymn of the Republic.
Yeah, that
It was modified to please the rulers.
Yeah, that was an obvious take on certain political rallies that have gone on in this country.
And I think that the film attempts to be an allegory of contemporary autocratic times.
I think in a certain way, the film, I think it felt like they had this idea, and then that was kind of retrofitted in there to be more in line with contemporary politics.
Yes, I know.
And the rest of the movie was like more about the Iraq War, from like I said, that sort of analogy and then or allegory, and then that's what it's shifted into at one point.
Well, make some sense out of Gaspar Noé's Climax.
Let's move on. Yeah,
I know.
the sense is there is no sense. Now, first of all, if you're gonna go see, if you're considering going to see Climax, do some research. Know who is directing this film and what you're getting
right
into.
there. Yeah.
Don't just go wandering into this film and say, "Oh, that sounds like a neat movie." Gaspar Noé's an extreme director.
Yeah.
And he's very graphic, both sexually and violently.
Oh, he is.
I'm not a fan.
What was it? One extended rape scene?
In Irreversible, it's
Yeah.
well known for there's a 10-minute rape scene.
Oh my
of
Lord.
Irreversible.
Yeah.
And I'll sit there and I'll say I hated that movie. Oh, it's because of that. I go, no, I hated that movie long before that scene even showed up.
All right. What's the premise here?
The premise of Climax is you got a group of dancers. You got a dance troupe in the 1990s, like 1996, and they have a big practice, like their final rehearsal, and then they have a big party, and they're in this abandoned school, and somebody spikes the sangria with hallucinogenic drugs. Yes.
Yes.
And it all turns into a crazy psychosexual bad trip.
And his camera, of course, is the big player in all of this.
That's
He
always
loves
that's
his
very
camera.
much.
He
Gaspar
can go
Noé.
on a ceiling and make it look like Busby Berkeley.
Well, but see, that's my problem. Here's my problem with Gaspar Noé. I think his stuff's incredibly shallow. It is just sex. Sex. There's actually a whole scene in there where everyone's at the party and everyone's just talking about sex. Nobody's talking about, oh, I watched this TV show last week, or hey, I got a new album, or my dog did this really cute thing. No, it's all about sex.
I saw very few people doing it.
Yeah,
There's a lot of talk about it.
Well, but that is, and there's no depth to his characters at all. And then he has this bag of tricks he uses, and he just overuses it. Like he has this camera there's a rig you can put on a camera that'll make the camera go around, and it's a neat effect. But you don't want to use it 15 times in a movie the way he does, because it cheapens all the times you would have used it before.
But Kevin, I believe that first part where they're dancing is a beautiful part.
Oh, the dancing scene's great.
Yes.
But
yes.
that makes you sound like the guy who's like, oh, well, Top Gun, the flying scenes were cool.
That's a good. But they are, and his camera moves amongst them as they're dancing, and their arms are stretched and moving, and it's really quite. They're all professional dancers, of course, and
yeah,
and this is
they're very good.
Yeah, and they're very good.
Yeah.
But when it moves into the storyline, oh, Kevin.
The storyline in quotes.
Yeah,
my problem is it's like I said, he's got a small bag of tricks. He overuses them, and it just his movies become needlessly punishing. And it also, at the beginning of it, it has these video interviews, and you actually see it in the trailer. And they have a stack of VHS tapes, stuff like Possession and Suspiria, and it's these stuff that are like so obviously he's doing a homage to him in the middle of the movie. Like there's a scene in there that's a huge homage to the scene in Possession, and I'm like, it's a little heavy-handed to have the videotape at the beginning and then do that scene. Same thing with Suspiria taking place in a German dance school. You know, it's. I think it's sort of Gaspar Noé, like, you know, oh, isn't this fun? Oh, look how smart I am. And no, you're not.
Just another chance for him to trick out his cameras.
Yeah, it's just a psychedelic trip that overdoes it.
All right, Kevin Carr, we've had 2 movies.
Yes.
And I don't think we've inspired anybody for either one of these, but we do have to award grades to them.
Yes.
Captive State, what grade would you give it?
I'm going to give it a C for Captive State.
And I am exactly with you on Captive State at C. And now, what about Climax?
I'm going to give it a D-. And it doesn't get an F because the dance scenes are cool.
Yes, and I'm going to give it a C- because I think the dance sequences are very cool and help out. All right, Kevin, it's that time of year,
Yeah.
let's look forward to films for which we can make even more sense.
Yes. Well, it's got to go up from here.